just mean like I'm going to be a better man, I'm going to try harder, but I want to talk specifically about you choosing areas in your life that you want to improve on. I believe there's a deep desire in all of us, especially men, to continue to improve ourselves in many different areas. Not just spiritual, not just physical, possibly financial, possibly just skills or things like that. And what I have learned throughout my life, much from my father and other mentors that I've had, is to create a process which seems simple, but it really needs to be broken down for people to help understand it. And so today I want to take a few minutes and share with you the process and how you can become a better man in different areas of your life. So first of all, there has to be a desire. You know, you have to desire to have a change or a plan in some area of your life that you want to get better at. And so typically that starts with something that you have a passion for, a talent, a natural gifting, something like that. If you just say, hey, I want to be better in some random area, you probably aren't going to have the desire to want to pursue it. And really, that's the key. There has to be at least some little bit of curiosity, some little niche inside of you that's like, you know, I wanna know more about this. I wish I was better in this area. So always start there. Now listen, if you're weak at finances and you're just not good at it, but you know you're weak, and maybe you're not good at finances because you ignore them and they stress you out so you don't deal with them, then yeah, that's still probably a good enough reason. If there's desire and or pain, it's a good reason to choose that to start to work on. You know, one of the quotes that I remember hearing a while back was from one of our Olympic divers, Greg Louganis, who, you know, he swept, I think it was the 84 and 88 Olympics in diving, remarkable athlete. But he was being interviewed and he said probably the greatest skill that his mom ever taught him was how to learn. Interesting. Not what to learn or what she taught him, but what she taught him was how to learn. And so let's start with that fundamentally in our brain right now. We now want to talk about once you've picked the interest or the desire you want to get better at, now we want to talk about how to learn that. Really, there's a lot of different ideas out there as far as, you know, your learning style. Are you kinesthetic? Are you auditory? Are you visual? You know, are you hands-on? Are you more classroom? Are you more, all these different things. There's a great TED Talk out there by Tejia, what's her last name? Marshik. And she said, after 40 years of research, take everything you know about learning styles and throw it out the window, because really the only thing that matters is that regardless of what you want to learn, there's a hands-on approach. You have to be involved in it. And so I want to go through just a couple key steps here of how you can be involved in it and really increase how to learn in a certain area or with a certain skill or passion or desire like that. So first is you want to interact with that information in multiple ways. So I'm just going to go through simple steps that I've used in my life to help learn and master different things. The very first one, again, you have to understand this. Oh, I got a backside sheet. You have to understand that a lot of times we jump right on the internet, go straight to the source, and think that's the best way. I actually kind of shy away from the internet when I'm studying things because I typically find that I'm going to find what everybody else finds. So I like to go to different books and different resources that aren't just necessarily right on the internet. You'd be surprised as a pastor how many sermons I hear of other people and they're preaching everybody else's stuff using the same examples, the same ideas. And so don't just jump to the internet. It's a huge help, but here's the process. Number one, I love a good book. You got to start with books, some type of education. Within that process, you have to understand that that's not just a one book thing. You don't just read one book. What's the old saying? 10,000 hours makes you an expert in a field. Okay, so 10,000 hours, if you just study 1 hour a day, that's 27 years. If you study 2 hours a day, what's that? 13 and a half years. I don't have 13 and a half years. So, you know, to speed up the process, books are good, but let's follow through. So, you're going to start with some education, books, videos. There are going to be a lot of things out there you can check. You know, I'm going to give you a couple secrets here. Number one is when you study for a topic or look for a topic, after you've already jumped on Amazon and maybe bought 1 or 2 books, shoot that topic into Google, but at the end of it, put PDF. you'll be surprised how many PDF journals and papers will pop up regarding that topic that you can download and read and study that are much more valuable than just searching for an article or an idea or a story. So with that education, you have to understand that you're going to go for as many resources as possible. So if I'm going to study something, I'm going for books, I'm going for PDF files, I'm going for articles, I'm looking for experts in the field. I'm going to study what they have to say about it. Yes, I'm going to try to see if there are other resources available to me that I can get online. But the next thing, which is mostly important, is mentorship. You have to find someone who can mentor you within that area of study. So if you're taking something as simple as, pet grooming, yeah, you can read the books, you can watch the videos, you can see the audios, you can check the podcasts, all of those things. But until you stand next to someone and actually watch them do that, and then they actually watch you do it, it's going to be really hard to really master a skill. And I'm not just talking about things that are hands-on. It could be a mental skill. It could be an emotional skill. You still need someone that are hands-on to walk you through it. And here's the thing. In all of this, one of the things I think we miss, and speaking of mentorship and the whole process, is before you ever even start this, you have to set some expectations for yourself. And I'll tell you why, because we're talking about mentors. So when you go, I want to learn this skill, I want to learn this thing, find out what are expectations you have. In 1 month, I want to be able to do this. In 3 months, I want to be able to do that. I remember when I started playing guitar, I said, in 1 year, I want to make my own album. And I did. And it was okay. Now, for 1 year of guitar playing, it was great. Now, if you listen to it, you go, but if you learn, hey, he didn't know anything about guitar, and at the end of the year, he made his own album, but set some expectations. Now, you could call them goals. I like to call them expectations because they're a little more lofty, and we don't necessarily know exactly how we're going to get there, but I expect that in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, to be at this level. Why is that important? Because when you start to get mentored, you also want to ask your mentor, what are expectations I should have? If I'm learning how to groom dogs, what's an expectation to have in a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year? See, they understand that process far greater than you do. So when you start, you have your expectations. But when you get to a mentor, they can actually help map out, even in greater detail, with better understanding, what the right expectation should be. Not that they should limit you. If someone says, hey, in 5 years, you should be able to clip the nails on a dog. But 5 years, hopefully in a week. So don't let their expectations limit you, but they will give you some valuable insight as far as where you're going and how far you can get there if you really put yourself into it. Number 3, you have to have interaction. And this is fundamental. This is what Tisha was talking about in her TED Talk. You have to now take your education in all the forms that you've learned it, your mentorship and what you've gained from it, and then you have to begin to teach it to someone else. And that's really critical. Here's why. Because even though we might absorb a lot and we might look at a lot of things, we're still somewhat trapped in a box of how we see things. So we come along and we start to teach it to someone, and they ask us some question out of the blue that we've never thought of. We're like, I don't know. So it helps expose some of the weaknesses and holes in your education. It's invaluable. You have to have fresh voices that you teach to, that speak back to you, because then you can look and go, okay, I thought I knew this, but I don't really quite know it. And many times, like me, the more I talk things out and teach them, the better I understand them as well as somebody else. Plus, one of the things is you'll find out that students or people that you teach have great illustrations or insights that you may have never thought of. I love stuff like that. So, I was sitting at a coffee shop yesterday, and I thought, I'm going to put this to the test, and I'm only going to take 15 minutes to see what kind of a process or plan I could put in place. But rather than choose something that I'm interested in, I leaned over to a woman that was having coffee. And actually, I had originally filmed this yesterday at a coffee shop, but 6 high school girls walked in, and not only were they chatty enough to begin with, but then they loaded up on caffeine, and then it was like the whole place was vibrating. So I decided to shoot it again today. So thank you, girls. But anyway, I said, lady, what's an interest, or if you could snap your fingers and have a skill in one area, what would it be? And I kind of explained what I was doing. I didn't know what to expect. And she said, I want to know how to make bows. And I was like bow and arrows? She's like, no. like Christmas bows or bows for your hair or bows for a dress. Christmas is coming up and she was thinking about that. She doesn't like how she makes bows. And so I thought, okay, I said, I'm going to choose that topic for my Monday Morning Man. So I took only 15 minutes, actually less than 15 minutes. I took 13 minutes. This is what I found as far as bow making. In my area, there are 7 classes within the next month on bow making, just in my area. There are 3 mentors, 3 different places I can get, teach someone to, have someone teach me how to make bows. There are over 300 plus videos on YouTube on how to make bows. There were 22 PDF files on how to make bows. There were 64 books on Amazon on how to make bows. I also found out that the average bow costs around $8, and that I also found an article on a woman who started a $1 million business by making bows out of her own house. Now, all of that took 13 minutes to figure out. So now here's how I make my plan. I'm going to spend 15 to 20 minutes 3 times a day studying either a book, a video, a podcast, a PDF file, or working with a mentor. Now, you might go, man, that's crazy to do 15 minutes three times. Here's why I say that. Number one, newness allows us to remember things better. You ever start to do something and you remember the first 5 minutes of it and the last 20 minutes you don't? It's because our brain loves the new. It loves, it gets locked in and starts to fade. So when things are new and fresh, we remember it more. So break it up, 3 15-minute sessions a day. But here's what you do. 15 minutes of a video in the morning, 15 minutes of a book in the afternoon, 15 minutes of a mentor or a podcast or something else that evening. So it's fresh and new, fresh and new, fresh and new. You keep it going. An example in my own life is when I knew that my life was going to be teaching and speaking and preaching, I knew that I was going to have to read a lot. In fact, I make my living really on reading. And so I try not to read all the books that everybody else is reading. Rule of thumb, I try to stay away from the top 10. I read books from everything from leadership to business to entrepreneurship to spirituality to Jesus, the whole thing. But I realized there's not possibly enough time to read a whole book in one setting. And then I discovered something that worked for me. Take a book of about 250 pages. I can read it in a week, easy. Here's how I do it. I take 250, I divide it by 7 days in a week, and then I divide that number by 3. That's about 11 pages. So what that really means is if I'm reading a book, I read the front and the back, the front and the back, the front and the back. That's really 3 pages, front and back, a total of 6. And so if I read 6 pages, if I read that 5 times, 5 pages, that's 10 pages. Am I making sense? So if I'm reading this front and then the back side, that's 1 page, but if I read 5 of those, that's 10 pages. That means if I do that 3 times a day, I'm going to polish off a book of 250 pages at the end of a week. So now 10 pages in the morning, which is really only 5 sheets, over breakfast is easy. 5 at lunch, 5 at night for supper or before I go to bed. And the other thing I do is I highlight and I file everything I read. So something happened a few years ago when I was teaching at North Central and it was a university, and I added up all the pages because I then type it into my computer and I keep all these alphabetized files. And this was years ago. I added up how many pages I'd had over the last, 20 some years. And before that, I was putting them on index cards, and I have probably about 30,000 index cards without joking. They're all alphabetized. But when I started to put them on my computer, I added up all the pages, and I had 24,000 pages of stories, illustrations, quotes, ideas, articles, all alphabetized. It started with just a few every day. And that's all I do is a few every day. But if you want to become an expert in an area, you don't just say, I'm going to go to school for 5 years. That's great. And if you're going to be a brain surgeon, please do that. I don't want a brain surgeon who studies 3 15-minute sessions a day. But for most of us, the average guy has got a job, got a family, and really wants to increase our learning curve and become maybe not an expert, but become really knowledgeable and good in one area. This is how you do it. You break it down into that process. So let's repeat. Number 1, education through many different mediums. Number 2, You have to have a mentor. You have to have someone who helps talk you and walk you through those things. Number 3, you have to interact and teach it to someone else, because that's how you're ultimately going to learn how much you know, how much you don't know, and where your weaknesses are. This is Garth Heckman, Monday Morning Man. I hope this helps you, at least brings a process. I know it's not revolutionary until you start to do it, and then it becomes revolutionary. We'll see you in a couple days.